Hey, I'm Dr. Jake Patton. I am going to be your instructor for intro. Guess it's down there. No, it's down there. Oh, that's the way. Intro to. Well, this is the intro to the intro class. So, SHS 205 is overview of communication disorders. And this is the of overview of communication disorders. So, okay. Anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about me. This is not going to mean as much to you uh, if you're not in Arizona, but that's fine. Uh, just whatever. So I was born in Mesa. That's a city in Arizona. Then I graduated from Hamilton High School, which is a school in Chandler, Arizona. They were really good in sports, and then they were also really good at having a lot of their students arrested for dealing drugs. So it's a complicated legacy, I guess. Then I went to ASU for everything. This, I guess, is cool for all of you now, even if you're not from Arizona, because you're also going to ASU. So I got my BS here at ASU, just like most of you are doing. Then master's, then PhD. So here's the thing. My PhD is in cognitive science. It says psychology there, but cognitive science is a more accurate term. What cognitive science is a branch of... It's usually a branch of psychology, but it's not really psychology. It's a lot closer to biology, neuroscience. Although at ASU, neuroscience is also a branch of psychology. It's not everywhere. Some places it's a branch of medicine. Some places it's its own thing. Anyway, cognitive science is combining neuroscience and biology and a little bit of psychology, but not in the way that you're thinking. What are your problems? And also math. It combines a lot of math. And some of the things that we're looking at in cognitive science are like memory. Where is memory stored? How do we process memories? Is long-term memory different from short-term memory? Is that different from working memory? We'll talk about definitely working memory and short-term memory in this class. For some, in some disorders that we're talking about. Some disorders impact working memory and short-term memory. Some disorders impact long-term memory. So we'll talk about all these things here and there. Some other things that we do in cognitive science are, and this is where I did most of my specialization, is like the senses. All 5 of your senses. How do we process things that, we're sensing? So touch, how does that work? We'll talk more. If you take 310 with me, we'll talk a lot about touch sense. It doesn't really fit into this class, but we talk about it in 310. But in this class, we do talk about hearing a lot. And that's one of my specialties. My 2 specialties were auditory perception and visual perception. Vision doesn't come up very much in this major at all because it's speech and hearing. So, nobody cares about sight. Gross. But we will talk about hearing a decent amount. And so the idea is, how do we hear? We know that we hear, but how? How do we make sense of all the things? I have a lecture at some point in this class about that, so I'm not going to give away too much. But that's what I specialized in, doing my PhD. And so once I graduated, it was an obvious step to go to work at the speech and hearing science area within the College of Health Solutions now. It used to be its own thing, but anyway, that's where a lot of the auditory research is done, is in speech and hearing science. We have clinicians who teach about clinical practice, but we also need researchers to figure out new things that can inform the clinical practice. And this is another thing that we're going to talk about in the class as well, that there's a cycle that goes back and forth between clinical practice and research. It's all important, and whatever area you like, that's the area you should focus on. I think most of you are probably interested in being clinicians, but it's possible that during the course of your education, you'll change your mind and you'll decide that, hey, man, research is really cool and I think I would be good at it. And then maybe you want to go that direction. It's all important. We learn new things, we can put those into practice. Once those are in practice, the people who are doing the practice notice things where maybe we need to look into something a little further, and so we go back to the research. And then of course research is also informing itself, like when we're trying to figure out like how do we hear, we figure out one aspect of how we hear, but then that kind of raises questions in another area. So it's always a cycle. We work together to make it better. I'm also a runner. My face is covering me, but this is me and two of my friends. We did one of those mud runs. It was a lot of fun. It was the first and so far only mud run I've done, but I have really fond memories of it. I'd like to do it again. Regular 5Ks are cool, and 10Ks, and I have not done an official half marathon. Like I've done a half marathon, but not like entered into one. They're fun, but something about like squidging around in mud is awesome. I don't know. Anyway, let me know if you also enjoy playing in mud, I guess. Anyway, another thing that I will tell you is I've graduated now, so I don't have to worry about this anymore. But I changed my major so many times when I was an undergrad. So, like, if this is you, if you feel like changing your major ever, don't worry about it too much. It's not something that's going to look bad on applications. It's better that you find an area where you want to be, rather than making something work. So the first thing I did, I came in, I wanted to make movies. And we didn't have a film program when I got here, so they put me in journalism. And that's when I ended up over in the radio station, the campus radio station. I ended up being the production director, and production director of the radio station means I focus on making commercials and doing cool things with sound. I was already a musician and kind of like working on sound at home on my own, so it worked well. It taught me more about sound and things like that, which eventually helped me in my PhD career. But I didn't really know it at the time. Like I was doing this and I was good at it and I was having a lot of fun. I didn't know where it was going to lead. My cool audio gear is also informed by my time in radio. Gotta have good gear if you want it to sound great. But then what you shouldn't do is record in your house while the air conditioner is running, because that's definitely going to make it sound less good. Anyway, so that's, I think it's obvious this was the sports director, this was the news director, like they kind of look their part, and then she was the music director, also looks her part. So it was a cool, fun group. Man, undergrad was a lot of fun. And then we started a film program. And this is a still from a movie that I was in. So I did some acting and writing and also more sound design. And then eventually I figured out that I didn't really want to move to LA and work as a bartender while trying to get roles or sell screenplays. And I went to get a PhD in cognitive science, which is kind of like a weird roundabout thing. I also did writing, like, I don't know, creative writing for a while. English literature, that's what the degree was. So it's been around, a lot of things. And I ended up in a place where I really enjoy what I do. So the point here is, if you're taking these classes and you're noticing that the career that you think that you like is becoming not as interesting to you because you're learning things about it that are changing your perception. Like I don't want to talk anybody out of doing this job. You can make a ton of money as an SLP or an AUD. And SLPAs make a decent amount of money as well. And an SLPA is a great stepping stone to SLP. So, money is definitely a thing that you should think about. Not the only thing, but you should definitely think about it. And this profession is a way where you can, like, money exists in this profession. It's also a helping profession, so if you like helping people, that is this is great. This is where you can do that. However, if you feel like you learn more and this just isn't where you want to go, you should take the opportunity that you have by being at a university and check out some other majors. You can start by taking like electives, and then if something speaks to you, you can do that. The other thing that you should also consider is, while we talk about things throughout the class, I think a lot of people come in thinking that, oh, I want to work with kids, and that's pretty much it. I'm not interested in all the other aspects of speech disorders. And that's cool because there's a lot of openings for people working with children, with pediatric stuff. It's a big, important area to go into. However, there is also an entire area of adults, not just older adults, but adults like you and me, who can have car accidents, who may go to war and have injuries and come back with speech problems, or have a stroke, or fall down and have speech problems from this, like aphasias and other things like that. Then, of course, there's also older adults who are having more problems like this. And all of these groups need good, well-qualified help. So I don't want to talk anybody away from working with kids, but it does tend to be where most people are focused. And if you start to learn more about it and you feel like some of these like hospital-based and adult-based things is something where you would shine a little bit more, pursue that, because we need people in those positions as well. Okay, let's keep going to the next slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about my research. My face is covering up some of this research also. One of the most fun things that I work on is probably looking at swear words. I don't know if you can, no, you can't see this, but in my bookcase back there, I've got like all these books on swear words, which is fun. What we noticed in this study, I guess I'm gonna have to move my face, is looking at the vowels, the vowel sounds, the vowel phonemes that are used in swear words. There's a fundamentally different pattern for swear words than there are for non-swear words. The way we looked at non-swear words, where we looked at 6 hours of university lectures, that's one thing where you can take like how often a vowel sound shows up. You can also look at names. So we looked at that as well, because sometimes swear words are used in place of a name. So like instead of "Hey John," you say like "Hey asshole," something like that. And what we found was it's a fundamentally different pattern. And and I think you can probably think of some like excellent versions of both of swear words using both of those phonemes. And are used way more often in swear words than they are in regular, just normal speech. And what's interesting is we also found some areas where phonemes are used less often in swear words than in regular speech, and that's E and oo. And if you think about E and oo, those tend to be the sounds that we add to words when we're talking to like babies, children, small animals, or making things sound cute. So you add like E and oo to these things, and that doesn't get used in swear words hardly at all. I can think of exactly one sort of swear word that uses an E, and it's not really a swear word. It's just like a body part slang. So it's like, well, you don't use it like in your daily, but it's not like, well, I guess you could be. Anyway, um, it doesn't. E is not used a lot. Oo is not used a lot. So that's pretty interesting. We're doing some follow-up research to this right now. If you have a class with Dr. Boss, he's working with me, and we have some RAs that we're directing. RA stands for Research Assistant. We're actually looking at if you say different words in different emotional contexts, do the vowels in those words start to look more like an or if you are angry? So if you're saying it in anger, does it look more like an or an The reason that we're doing this is, can this explain why our swear words tend to have those vowels in them? Because we use that shape of our pharyngeal, like the whole apparatus, the whole like resonant apparatus, the pharynx and the mouth and everything, to make these and sounds. So then do we prefer those phonemes in our swear words because we're already configured in that way when we're angry? So it's easier to say a swear word that has an or an in it than an e, because you're not making an e shape when you're upset. So said like feek, but maybe your mouth doesn't want to constrain itself to saying an E sound when you're upset. So it's harder to say that. That's one area of research that I'm working in. The other two are not as applicable to this major, so I'm going to go over them a lot quicker. One is there's a drum called the Nigerian talking drum. It's also called the dun drum. So this is some ethnomusicology research that I'm doing with people. One researcher from Nigeria. She lives in Germany right now, but she's from Nigeria. She speaks Yoruba, which is the language that the dun speaks in. Essentially, this drum can speak, like it represents language. Unlike normal drums that are just like this, you can like tighten it. So like if you see this dude down here, there's strings on the drum, and if he puts it like in a headlock like that, then and he can hit the top of the drum, it'll change the pitch. So it's kind of like a drum and a bass at the same time. So it's like boom, 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 like that. What this means is that because Yoruba is a tonal language, you can represent the tonal language with the pitch of the drum. So the pitch and the rhythm of the drum can represent the language. And some of the things that we're doing right now are, we've shown that this matches speech to like an extraordinarily high degree. It's not just kind of like representative of it at like a cartoon level or like a sketch level. It is exactly doing what speech is doing. So what Yoruba speech is doing. And then the most recent paper that we wrote on this was, we looked at like what is the biggest factor that allows people to recognize this as dun speech. So we took people that speak Yoruba who are and aren't musicians, and then also people who don't speak Yoruba who are and aren't musicians. What we found was, obviously, if you speak Yoruba, you have a big boon in figuring out what what this drum set. Like if you're matching up this speech and this drum sound, you're like, oh, okay, the guy going ala wale anawa sounds like boom 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 boom, like that. But being a musician helps in both languages. So people who speak Yoruba but are musicians are better at matching these up even than people who just speak Yoruba. And English speakers who do not speak Yoruba at all but are musicians also can see the similarities between what's like spoken in Yoruba and the drum. So there's a musical component to it. There's also a linguistic component to it. And we're going to test out people who speak Mandarin this semester, because that's a tonal language too, but it's a completely different kind of tonal language. So we want to see, Does the tonal language component help, or are they just as bad as the English speakers because it's a different kind of tone? The last thing that I work on, this picture here of me is from like a story in Psychology Today. I'm working on finding the peak of the fourth color cone in humans. Not everybody has four color cones. Most people have three, but there are some people who have four cones. They're called tetrachromats. And like this used to be like, we thought it was pseudoscience. Like nobody has four cones. And then when genetic testing came around, we actually discovered that like, whoa, there are actually people with four cones. But the thing about genetic testing is that it doesn't tell you where. Like we know red, green, and blue. That's like if you have three cones, like most people have three cones, that's where you're seeing things. If you're colorblind, it's probably you have blue and red cones. Red, green, blue. You have green and blue. That's what it usually is. Usually. You can have any combination of the two. They all exist, but there's some that are more likely if you're colorblind. If you are a regular sighted person and you have three, you have red, green, and blue, but we don't know where the fourth one is in people that have tetrachromacy. And so I'm working with a guy that won a Nobel Prize, Frank Wilczek, right here, on figuring out where the peak of the fourth color cone is. So that's cool. I think we found it. Like I was just interviewed in a documentary by the people who did My Octopus Teacher, which is a super cool documentary. It's not anime. It's an actual documentary. So you should watch it. Like if you're a nerd, I guess. But they interviewed me a couple months ago about this work, and I'm gonna publish these results soon so I can actually say what we did. I can't because it's kind of a new thing and I don't want somebody to scoop it before I get it. Anyway, ask me in class if you're interested, like in office hours, and I can talk about it. If you're not interested, that's fine. It's eyesight stuff. There's no reason why you need to be interested in that. Let's talk about how the class is scheduled. There are 5 exams. The lowest is dropped. So we'll have 4 regular exams that are just going to cover like a quarter of the content in the entire class, just like your typical thing. You know, like here's an exam. It covers what we just talked about. Here's another exam. It covers everything from the last exam to the next one. And then there's a cumulative exam at the end. The lowest exam is dropped. So here's what you could do. If you take all 4 exams, like the first 4, and you do really well on them, like, you know, you get 90% or above on all of them, and you feel comfortable with the grade that you have, you don't have to take the final because it'll go in as a 0 if you don't take it, and then the lowest exam is dropped, and there you go. You didn't have to take it. Or this could be a safety net for you. So, like, let's say that you didn't do well on one exam, or you forgot to take it. Well, that gets dropped, and then you take the cumulative exam, and you take the score from that. And then you can also just, if you're a person who's like really type A, you can take all of them and get like a 95% in all of them, and then the one that you got a 94 in will be the one that you drop, and you'll get an A+, and you know who you are. There's going to be at least 2 of you in this class. There are 6 quizzes in this class. I should go back and tell you, exams are closed. Like, you cannot use your notes in these. These are closed book. You have to just take them from your brain. You're going to use the lockdown browser. So essentially your computer is going to spy on you and like tattle on you if you use any sources or something like that. And the exams are set up so that like there's new questions every semester also. So if you like don't use Course Hero and stuff like that, don't do it anyway. But I make them sneaky so that if you're trying to cheat from previous exams, you'll probably get the answers wrong. So it's best just to like study the stuff. It's not a hard class. Just study and take the exam. But here's the thing. So for the quizzes, what I want you to do is your first try through the quiz, Treat it like an exam. See what you know. And then the second attempt, just pull out your notes and get full credit. I don't want anybody to not get full points on the quizzes. Like, definitely try to get all full points on the quizzes. Those aren't there to hurt you. They're there to help you, to show you what you need to study for the exams, and then also to like help cement that stuff. So like, second time through, make sure you're getting full points. First time through, see where you need to go back and study. There's also 3 homeworks. This is not accurate anymore. So the first one is a written thing, but it's just like, what do you want to do? So like, you know, SLP, SLPA, AUD, stuff like that, or PhD. Maybe by then I've convinced one of you to come over to this side. Who knows? It's short. It's really simple. Easy stuff. The second homework is no longer a written paper. It's going to be like, you can make a slideshow. You can make a infographic. We'll talk more about it, but you don't have to write anything for the second one. The third one is just making the second one longer. So you're going to add more sources to what you did in the second homework. Just kind of refining it. Okay. So that also is just there mostly to help you and help you learn about things. Oh, I guess I should tell you the homework, the second and third homeworks, you're going to choose your own disorder. So like, whatever interests you most, if we covered it, if we haven't covered it, whatever, choose it, something that's really interesting to you, and then like dive deeper into that subject. So that should be pretty interesting. People seem to like this, usually. There will be extra credit. Like, I'll have some studies that I'm doing, and you can participate in them for extra credit. If I don't have any, then somebody else in the department probably will. So there's going to be at least one of those. There could be 2. I don't know. It depends on how the semester goes for people doing research. DRC and sales accommodation. DRC is what it used to be called, which stands for Disability Resource Center. It's now called sales, which stands for Student Accessibility and Inclusive Learning Services. This is the first time in like 5 years that I've ever been able to remember that acronym. Yay. You can visit them in person if you're here in Arizona, or digitally if you're not. If you think you could use any accommodation, they can give you tests for dyslexia, test anxiety, auditory processing disorder, all sorts of things. And here's the thing. It never hurts to see if you think that there could be something. No one is told, no, like your friends, your family, your instructors, we don't know if you go to sales and see if you have any of these things. The only time that we're notified is if you end up with accommodations. Then we have to be told so that we can give you those accommodations. So if you don't qualify, nobody knows. It's like a low-risk thing. Only the person who works at sales will know that you went in to be tested for this, and you'll never see them again. So who cares what they know? If you do qualify, it can like change your academic life. A quick anecdote about this. I had a student who, this was an in-person class. He was taking exams, and he, you know, like he's getting like a 70, like a C, like a high C, but not doing very well. And he says like, yeah, you know, I can't, the reason I'm getting such bad grades is like I can't read the questions fast enough and answer these things. And like, yeah, maybe, like, I don't know. I've heard people have excuses for why they don't do good in class, like a few times. But I decided to look at his exam, and it's true. Like, he would get at least 95% correct, if not more, in the first 3 quarters of the exam, and then it would immediately tank because he's just like guessing, he's like quickly filling it in or leaving it blank. And I'm like, oh man, it is like a time issue. And so then I asked him about it, and he's like, well, here's the thing, like when I read these things. I have to like go back. I have to read them like multiple times really slow to make sure that I know what it's saying. And I'm like, this sounds like you have dyslexia. You should go to the DRC. We went to the DRC. Turns out, yeah, he does have like dyslexia. It wasn't caught when he was in grade school because it wasn't like so bad that he was like slower than the rest of his class in grade school. So he kind of like skated by. But then by the time you get to college where there's like longer words and more complex sentences, now it's all of a sudden like hindering his performance. And turns out, yeah, he's got dyslexia. So then all of a sudden he gets accommodations. There's fonts that you can install on your computer to make it easier to read. One of them is called Open Dyslexia. Let me see. Well, I don't have it up. I'll show you in class. But one of them's called Open Dyslexic Font. There's a couple others. They kind of look like those like weird 70s fonts, like oh yeah, pot, and Mystery Machine, like Scooby Doo stuff. But for some reason, this helps people with dyslexia keep, well, there's a few different kinds of dyslexia. So some fonts help people at different rates. But one of the things that happens to some people is maybe 2 or 3 letters can get which one came first, and that makes it harder to read. And for some reason, these fonts help keep them in order. We might talk more about dyslexia because it's something I've been looking into a little bit more, like through the course of the class. If this sounds like you, go look at the Open Dyslexic Font and just Google it, and you'll read passages in it. And if it looks better to you, yeah, maybe you should talk to the DRC. Anyway, it changed his entire academic career, and instead of getting C's in classes, he started getting A's. He is now in medical school, so awesome. He actually might be doing like round, like not full doctor, but doing rounds somewhere now. So total change of like fortune. It's very cool. Anyway, any of these things or anything at all, go talk to sales, and they will be able to evaluate you and see if you qualify for any accommodations. In my class and all your other classes at ASU, you'll get these accommodations, and they can help you succeed. The last thing I want to talk about is damn face in the way. That was the wrong thing. Health equity. There we go. Health equity. This is a new-ish thing. Health equity. It's a principle that looks at the socioeconomic factors determining who gets health care, and how well that care is delivered. So, like, not everybody has equal access to health care. And it's determined by, like, a lot of things. I think 2 of the biggest things that you'll think of are, like, your socioeconomic status. So, like, if you're poor, you don't have as much access to health care. Yeah, that's true. You don't. And if you are like certain different races also don't have as good of access to healthcare. That's true too. But it goes beyond that. I mean, those are like the more obvious ones. But we can talk about age. We can talk about neurodiversity. Not even just in healthcare, for whatever the neurodiverse issue is, but also say healthcare beyond that. So like speech care for regular delays for a person who has neurodivergence, where those are not related to one another because they're neurodivergent, they tend to not get as much like speech therapy for the thing that they're actually slowed down in. So, I mean, this is everywhere. We see this everywhere. In terms of strokes, there's a huge difference in who gets care when between gender. Men go in and they say things that sound like a stroke, and they're more likely to immediately be evaluated by a neurologist than women. That's also true if you're white. You're more likely to be evaluated more quickly than if you're black. So there's all sorts of things that kind of run into each other in this equity space. So I've been trying to put these things into the disorders that we're talking about, disorders and diseases that we're talking about. We're talking about a whole bunch of stuff. But it develops quickly. Like there's a lot of research in this space right now. So the things that I have in my slides may be true right now, but like in 6 months, we might have learned more. So I'm going to try to keep those up to date, and they probably won't be in the videos, but if there's anything new that I find out, I'll put it in announcements for you. We'll talk about it in video announcements or written announcements. We can talk about it in office hours. I'm going to have live office hours that you can come to as well. So I'm going to try to keep you updated. Nothing, whatever's on the slides, that's what you're tested over. I don't think I'm testing you over any of the health equity topics. This is just kind of like new knowledge that I want you to know. But it evolves so quickly that I don't test you on it. But it's an important thing to know about. It's an important thing to keep your eye on, like during this class, after this class, read about it in the news, stuff like that. The reason, there's two reasons. One is eventually you're going to want a job. And this is a good thing to know about because a lot of healthcare providers are focusing on this now. Like it's a thing that we know about and we're trying to change it. And so if you know about this, this is a great thing. Employers are going to want to be like, oh yeah, they're really knowledgeable about health equity. They can help us reach more people and be better at our jobs. And the second thing is, you know, you're going into a healthcare profession. Health adjacent is what they sometimes call it, but it is a health profession. And so you're supposed to provide care to everyone who needs it. And if there's a population who's underserved, older people, younger people, whatever, it's like it's baked into what we do to identify those populations and then get healthcare to them also. So 2 good reasons. If you're interested in this space, there are a few different things you can join at the school. The one that I've got here is HPEN. It stands for Health Policy Equity Network. I do work in there. You can join as a student. So there's probably an email that's going to go around about that, but you can also search for it on, just ASU HPEN. Search for it that way. There's also a student group here called SHS for CLD, which is Speech and Hearing Students for Cultural and Linguistic Diversity, which touches on these kind of health. Some of the things they talk about are these health equity topics as well. And that's all I know in terms of groups that you can necessarily join. But it's an interesting place. And like the more you learn about underserved populations, you're like, oh man, we need to get healthcare to these people. I'll tell you another thing that's really important about this is job security. The more we learn about people who aren't being served, the more SLPs there needs to be. And we just need to keep, hiring more SLPs, putting them into these places and serving. So you got good job security in this place, especially if we continue to identify areas that are underserved. So great. I think that's the last thing that I had for class. Yes. So now you can go look over your syllabus, take your first quiz over the syllabus and everything we've talked about. Like I said, I'm going to have live office hours before each exam. We can go over questions that you have for the exam or whatever. You can ask other questions about stuff that isn't on the exam. So like as you're watching the videos, you have a question about something, bring it to live office hours. And, we'll just chat. Treat it like a normal, like an in-person class. Okay, that's the end of this. This is too long. Anyway, you're tired of listening to me talk. So see you in class.